So, the forms are changing. All the forms are changing. All the forms are changing. Together, all the forms are changing. All the forms of spirituality and religion are changing. Together, all the forms of spirituality and religion are changing. And we're seeing it everywhere. The Holy Fool was the nickname of St. Francis, but Pope Francis, well, he got in trouble this last week, and he said some things that I thought were really pretty cool. He got into trouble because he made a politically incorrect comment about his home country of Argentina and how it was getting drug traffickers, and he didn't want it to turn into Mexico. So the Mexican president took some offense, and got on the air, and he went on national television in Mexico. And he apologized. He said, "I am an arrogant Argentinian. And that is our characteristic. In fact, I was going to call myself Pope Jesus II. But I decided I shouldn't." He says, and then he said to the commentator, "And do you know how an Argentinian commits suicide?" The commentator says, "No, I don't." He says, he climbs to the top of his ego and he jumps off. I mean, let's get on with the show. Let's let go of the forms. You say, what are the forms? The forms are so rigid and constricted. I don't want the forms to change. I'm very comfortable with the forms the way they are. I like things to stay the same. I like to plan my talks. I like to make them a certain, I got to put them in the bulletin, and they're put online, and they're all figured out. I don't read notes anymore, but still. And then we were on our trip, and I flipped the talks. I for some reason, the talk about humor and spontaneity and laughter was this week, and instead of last week, like all the publicity was. And I'm telling Betsy about this. I don't get it, and there's a reason. It's because today at 1 o'clock, Celeste is going to be leading an introduction to something called laughter yoga, in which all basically you do is you laugh. It's a structured laughing. And in order to bypass the conditioned thinking of the third dimensional mind, your lower mind, it's an exercise of just laughing and laughing and laughing. And of course, we have to explain it. So we're going to have an introductory explanation, but she's going to have some fun with it. And then on Tuesday at 10:30 and on Wednesdays at 7, from here on out, she's going to be leading these laughter yoga groups. I'm telling you about this because this is the way things work. When you work in the spontaneity of spirit, well, what does the word spirit mean? Spiritus means wind. Jesus said the wind blows from here to there. We don't know where it came from. We don't know where it's going. And so it is to the one born of the Spirit. John said, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot figure it out. Yes, cannot figure it out. We can't figure out that light sometimes, but sometimes we've got to do something to bring it forth. And sometimes that thing is to let it go. Where in your life are you stuck in a rigidity? Rigid thinking, rigid habits, got to have it this way, got to do it that way. Church's got to look this way, my relatives got to do it that way. Or where in your life do you have people in your life who are telling you to do it differently, who are telling you that you need to be somebody different than you are? Who is your inner guide? Where is your inner guide? How do you get into it? Well, laughter is one way to do it. And one of the things that we're doing in this church is that we're willing to make mistakes. My daughter was talking to me about religion and her idea of spirit and stuff. She's 18. She's an adult now. She can do what she wants to do. But she said, what's the purpose of churches? What's the point of churches? And it's like, I don't know. Today the theme is I don't know, because the truth is I don't know. Forms are changing. People are always going to need community. People are always going to need connecting in spirit. Jesus said, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst of them. So there's an exponential increase of power and energy in numbers. But these forms that we're involved in so much, they're going to change. They're changing. And it's not going to be a mega church with a rock band, folks. That's passe. People are so churchy. They're hungry for intimacy. They're looking for something. How do we get into it? How do we get into the spontaneity of the Spirit? How do we get into that Spirit that is constantly pushing forth through you, as you, in you? The purpose of life is pushing out through you. I see it in your eyes. I see it in your eyes. I took my kids to my sacred spot. When I was 14, I would go into the woods and meditate and write my Youth of Unity materials. And it was a place called Chabot Park in San Leandro, California. And I found out later it was the sacred place for the Native Americans in the area. But I didn't know it, but boy, I could feel it. The energy was like, wrong, 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 wrong. And I smell the bay laurel trees and the eucalyptus trees and listen to the sound of the creek and meditate. Where can you awaken in your beingness to the spontaneous spirit that cannot be corralled? Jesus called it the new wine. Remember, he said you can't put a new wine in old wineskins because they'll burst. The life, the frothiness, the yeastiness, and the word spirit, spiritus, was the same word they used for wine and alcohol. Not to say that we should become alcoholics, but talking about an uncontrollable something. It also is the word they use for wind. It's a something that is invisible, like wind. It's something that is moving, and how do you open up to it? And I showed them where I would go, and we had such a beautiful time there. But where in yourself can you go? Where can you go? Humor! You can go to humor. You can have fun. You can open up to it. You know, I was listening to Jeff Greenfield, who's been a TV news commentator for years, talking about how he, for the last several years, has gotten almost all of his knowledge about current events from The Daily Show. And I just went off the air and they did a study in which they took current events tests to see how well you knew current events, and they gave it to all manner of people. The people who did the worst were those who watched or listened to the most rigid political commentators. They knew almost nothing about what was going on. The people who knew the best were the viewers of The Daily Show. Why? Because, Jeff Greenfield said, because those guys can say, hey, Senator X is lying here, or Senator Y is being a jerk, you know? They could be real. No. Sacred fool. Sacred clown. Holy fool. What is this? Everybody knows about this. Myrtle Fillmore used to say that the Native Americans had a more natural and real understanding of spirituality even than the Judeo-Christian tradition. And Charles Fillmore was born on the reservation. His father ran the trading post. He was used in ceremonies at the age of 2. I was talking about that, and a man in the congregation was from that tribe and said, that's the guy. They told us about that guy when I was growing up. He was known. They didn't know his name. It was Charles Fillmore, the founder of Unity. The Spirit is constantly coming forth. And I experienced this sacred clown back in 1979. I was traveling cross country, and I was going through Arizona, and I decided to take a detour through the Hopi lands. And I didn't know much about it. But I stopped. I went. Somebody was selling pop, by the side of the road. It was a hot day. I went to buy some, and the woman who was from the tribe said, "Hey, if you want to, they're having the corn dance up on the top of the mesa." I didn't even know there was a top of the mesa. It was so well hidden. And there were these steps that had been cut into the side of those cliffs in the year 1200 AD. And I walked up with all the other people to the top. And there were very few non-Native Americans up there, but they did these ceremonies. And I'm telling you, the energy was, I mean, it's like, I can't make the sound. It's like this, it was like being in another world, another consciousness, another something, and it was so powerful. But in between these dances, which were so, I can't even describe them. They were dressed as kachinas, and they would do these repetitive movements, but there was an energy coming out of it. They would break, and out would come the sacred clowns. And they would make fun of the people there, especially the non-Native American people, but it was hilarious. They would have so much fun, and they also would do something where they would make things go backwards. They would act backwards. One of the things they would do. And it was really funny. Everything, it was like opposite day, when my kids used to talk about opposite day. And they would do that. And I was reflecting on that. How important that is to get out of the familiar, mind-numbing familiarity of the pomposity of the everyday mind. I get out of my everyday mind. Together? I get out of my everyday mind. And when you do that, what do? You open up to what? A spirit. You say, but it's serious. I got so much serious stuff. Look, there's nothing more serious than praying for rain when you're in a non-irrigated area and you're growing corn. and they were serious, but they would stop and they'd open it up and they'd get energy coming forth. If you're stuck, get out of your rut. Get out of your familiar thought. How do you do it? Humor is a powerful way to do it. And another way is to just do that which is unfamiliar to you. Go to that place. That's why I had that beautiful experience of going into the woods when I was a kid. Look in somebody's eyes and see the beauty that's there. Go out. We've got so much nature around here. And my gosh, these are the 3 weeks that we can actually go out and enjoy it in Chicago. Let's go out and enjoy it and be there. We had 2 seasons in Chicago, complaining about the heat and complaining about the cold. But we're in that in-between few days. But it's powerful. It's powerful. Getting out of the familiarity. I think I've shared before about there was a church in Arkansas that was stuck. And everybody was stuck in a certain consciousness and a certain mindset. And they decided that what they were going to do is turn everything around in the sanctuary and do the prayer service in the back of the room. And I was in a church at that time. Our staff was meeting. We were feeling we wanted to get out of a broken record kind of a consciousness and change the consciousness. So what we did was we turned the service around and did things starting off with a peace song. And moving backwards, the opening statement was the end of the service. And there were people who walked into the lobby who said to the ushers, "What's going on around here? I don't even know what's going on in this church anymore," and bolted out the door. To which I would say Martha Creek's line, "We need the seats." There's opening the space. In your life, where do you have people who are dictating to you who you were supposed to be? And where in your culture is that taking place? And where are you willing to unplug from the familiarity of that? Not fighting it, not resisting it, but joyfully expressing the beingness that you are. Jesus had such a person whose name was Judas. And Judas, I don't think Judas was really trying to do anything other than what he knew better to do. He just knew better. He did. He knew better. He was basically saying to Jesus, "Jesus, this is what you got to do. You got to set up a theocracy. I'll be the treasurer, and we'll rule. We'll overthrow the Romans. We'll overthrow the corrupt people in the temple, and we'll be in charge. And I know how to do. You don't want to do this? I know better. You don't want to do this? Oh, I'll tell you what we'll do instead. I'll set it up so that you have to die or do what I'm saying." And Jesus said, "What you have to do, go do it quickly." It was maybe it wasn't humor, but it was an openness, an open-handedness. Jesus was a comedian. There were many times that he said things like, "Turn the other cheek." That was an extreme. Or he said, "When they want your coat, give them your underwear." He actually said that. Stand naked in front of them. He said a lot of things. He said that the Pharisees, you were like unmarked graves. And this was in your life, where do you have people who have a rigid worldview, and they're wanting you to conform to their rigid worldview? And Jesus had so much fun with him. We think that he was condemning him. He wasn't. He was saying, "You Pharisees, you're like unmarked graves. People are walking over you and they don't even know you're there." He was constantly opening people up, constantly challenging. They were saying to him, "You've got to fast," so he ate. They were saying to him, "You've got to follow dietary rules," so he ate whatever he wanted to. They were saying to him, "You cannot heal on the Sabbath." And he said some pretty interesting things about it. Let's see. He said, "I'm doing one good deed and healing someone on the Sabbath, and you are all upset." And then here's his humor. "You circumcise a man on the Sabbath. And if a man can get circumcised on the Sabbath without the law of Moses being broken, why are you so mad at me for making a whole person healthy on the Sabbath? Don't judge by appearances. Judge right judgment." What's he saying here? He's saying, don't live your life according to the rigidity of cultural norms. Don't be normal, be natural. Let go of the rigidity. Now, I can sense that scares people. It scares people because what are we going to do? But there is a spontaneous knowing in your heart. There's a spontaneous knowing in your soul. It is calling you forth and it is ready to express. But you've got to do something. You've got to open up a space for it. And maybe you need to open up the space through humor. Maybe you need to open up the space through doing that which your soul and your heart calls you to do. Remember what Jesus said in John, or the author of John said, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not understand it. It can't figure it out. It doesn't know what to do with it. This is what Paul said. He said, matters of God can only be known by means of the Spirit of God. The purely material person has no use for that Spirit of God. It looks like foolishness. There's no way that that person can understand it because it can only be discerned spiritually. But a spiritual person, on the other hand, discerns everything, yet is understood by nobody. Oh, if you want to be understood, but sometimes you've got to let go of knowing to be open to not knowing. And that will allow yourself to be filled. My old mentor, Dr. Mary Ellen, used to say that the most powerful phrase in the universe is, I don't know. I don't know. And into it, she said, the whole universe pours. The whole universe pours if you open up a space of, I don't know, that cave of the heart. That cave of the heart. You know, it means being willing to do that which is unexpected, which is not familiar, which is not expected, which is not known. St. Francis was a great example of this. Remember St. Francis? Francis of Assisi, how he outraged everything all the time. What he did was, when his father gave him a lot of money, he was very wealthy, and he would give it to the poor, and his father cut him off. And so he showed up to his father, and he said, okay, and took off his clothes one by one, threw it at his father's feet, walked out the street naked, and said, here, take it all. And then he started getting followers around himself, and he decided, we'll start an order. It's now the Franciscan order. And so he went to Rome, and he talked to Pope Innocent, and he said to him, I want to start this order. And Pope Innocent was outraged by him because he was not following all the rules. He didn't look like he was supposed to look. He wasn't following the cultural norms of religion. And so Pope Innocent actually said to St. Francis, why don't you go out and be the pastor to the pigs? They are your flock. Go find a group of pigs, and in fact, while you're at it, roll around in their pig pen. And Francis thanked him and came back the next day covered in pig manure. And Pope Innocent looked at him and said, okay. He was so taken by his sincerity, by the fact that he would back up what he believed and was coming from this new place, that he was willing to let the new wine, not be in an old wineskin. And then St. Francis got into some trouble because he went away to Egypt to try to help them with the Crusades, maybe have peace. It didn't work, although there was one story about him and the Sultan of Egypt where they actually converted each other to each other's religion. But the Sultan looked at St. Francis and said, if we tell everybody out there, your side and my side, that we've converted to each other's religion, they'll kill us. So let's not do that. So St. Francis went back, and by the time he got back, they had turned his Franciscan order into kind of a political organization with all the rules and all the things and all the intrigues and all the stuff, and he was not welcome there. So he spent the rest of his life living in a cave, and he was not a Franciscan. I mean, that's a true story. So what is that? It's telling you that you've got to blaze your own trail. You've got to move out of the familiar and not the sophisticated normality of the pompous whatever. There's a wonderful quote from Thoreau. Why are we in such desperate haste to succeed in such desperate enterprises? If a person doesn't keep pace with their companions, perhaps it's because they hear a different drummer. Let that person step to the music that they hear, however measured or far away. So you move by your own internal rules, your own internal logic. You say, but how can I trust it? That's why you've got to take the time to cultivate that internal voice. Take the time to do whatever spiritual practices are meant for you to do, and then you will be that spontaneous self. And as they say, to the silent mind, the whole universe surrenders. There's that story about Gandhi. Gandhi was very spontaneous. He said that the reason why he succeeded, and he actually overturned the rule of the greatest empire that the world had ever known, and found independence for his people. But he said it was because he meditated every morning and then followed the guidance that came to him, which was not at all what he expected. And he would follow that guidance, and sometimes, he said, I argue with it. Sometimes it looks like it's going to fail. He says, but I'm willing to fail and be the holy fool for spirit. Here in our church, we try all kinds of things out. And one of my philosophies that sometimes irks people is, I'm willing to fail. You try 10 things, 3 of them succeed. You try this out, you try that out, you've got to be, and that's what life is all about. So Gandhi, when he showed up in London and he was going to speak to Parliament after they had received their independence, he showed up in his clothes, and they put him in a modest hotel in a little neighborhood where there were a lot of kids playing soccer in the streets. And he meditated that morning, and then he spent the entire day before that evening's presentation where he was supposed to give this great address, playing soccer with the kids in the street. And somebody came up to him, one of his advisors, said, when are you going to work on your talk? And he says, if God's got something to say, God's going to say it. And he lived in the moment. He lived in the moment. Now, where in your life can you take a break? Take a break from the mind-numbing, stifling unreality of the false judgment of the culture that we see around us. Jesus said, don't judge by appearances, don't judge false judgment. I love this quote from Paul. He said, God chose the foolishness of the world to put the wise to shame. God chose the weakness of the world to put the strong to shame. God chose the low-born nobodies to replace the somebodies so that no living creature would act too proud before God. And how do we do this? Through laughing at life, through being spontaneous. It's such a challenge to the ego, but sometimes we gotta climb to the top of the ego and jump off. Sometimes we gotta move into that. So right now, we gotta move into it, because if I talk anymore, you're gonna get more and more in this about it. So let's move out of this and move into this right here. The cave of the heart, the opening of the heart. If you've got something you're working on, create a space, go into your heart, open it up, open it up, open it up. However you need to do, imagine that cave of the heart, that opening, that place in your heart. And let go of that idea that there's always something new, there's always hidden treasure, there's always the spontaneous something. Open up your heart. Get in touch. And ask whatever question you need to ask. And go into a space of I don't know, and then just stop your mind. And this now moment is everything I need for everything to work out in divine order for the highest good. And I let go of my personal need to judge or control it. I live in the spontaneous spirit, the spontaneous expression of my living spirit. Thank you, God. And so it is. So we're here for spontaneity. We're here for the sake of the Spirit. And so the spontaneity is not found in the papers or the notes or the writing things down. The spontaneity is found in this moment. So many things we do to protect ourselves, to buffer ourselves from reality. We do things to stay in our heads, to keep ourselves safe, doing the familiar thing. But now it's time to drop it, to let it go. So take that piece of paper and set it down and open your hands. Open your heart, open your mind, and be here now. In this sacred moment. Sacred means open. Holy means whole and complete. And the only way to experience wholeness and completeness is to open up to it. And the only opening is to say, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the answer may be, but there is that in me that does know. As the Tao Te Ching says, the one who thinks he knows does not know, and the one who does not know knows. So let go of your knowing and just move into mystery, and imagine that you're in water and that you're moving in water, the fluidity of the water, spirit, Water, living waters, Jesus said. And so we experience the fluid of the now moment of the Spirit. And this opens up a space in our heart, a sacred space in which we just say, whatever I need, I let go of it, and I move into a sacred space of, I don't know, by creating an opening. The entire universe can rush in. To the silent mind, the whole universe surrenders. That part of you that says, how can I ever know? How can I ever get my answer? Set that part aside and embrace the not knowing. The sacred space, the holiness that says, I'm willing. An expectant emptiness, anticipating an answer without outlining it. I let go into my answer. Whenever I have a thought, I just say, I don't know, and open up into greater and deeper space, opening, receptivity. I am now open and receptive. I am now open and receptive. In this now moment, I cease my struggle. I let go. And I move into the sacred space, silent. I don't know. Receptive, anticipating, expectant. The beauty of this space that we are opening is that the answer comes unbidden. The deepest levels of our being and surfaces and arises when it's needed. The Tao rises spontaneously and expresses of itself. The presence of God is here now present. We open, and we find our point of poise and rest. With confidence, we move forth, saying, and so it is. So we're going to move into our time of giving, and we're giving with the spontaneity of the now moment. So I give in the spontaneity of the now moment, and I receive abundantly. Together, I give in the spontaneity of the now moment, and I receive abundantly. And silently. And again aloud together. I give in the spontaneity of the now moment, and I receive abundantly. And so it is. Amen.